welcome back to Bengal Bites, a Cincinnati Bengals fan podcast from a real, raw, unfiltered perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 31. This is the Week 14 recap, where the Cincinnati Bengals defended their home turf and beat the Indianapolis Colts 34-14 in front of a sellout crowd at Paycor Stadium. That's right, the Cincinnati Bengals blew out the Colts, battle of the backups, the rematch of the Apple Cup, Jake Browning versus Gardner Minshew. Jake Browning victorious once again, and this Bengals season is back on track. Unbelievably, somehow, the Bengals have found a way to win 2 games in a row. They're at 7-6, and they're still in this thing. There's 6 teams in the AFC that are 7-6. Bengals are one of them. They're still in the hunt. They're not in the playoffs at the moment, but if they keep winning football games, anything could happen. Now, whereas last week was the unbelievable Jake Browning throwing for 85% and winning in overtime on Monday Night Football against the Jaguars, this game was a pretty solid Jake Browning game, but more than Jake Browning, this was an entire team effort, organizational success. There's so many good things to talk about in this game, from the defense to the offense, the special teams, coaching, even the scouting and the personnel department, because we saw so many Bengals draft picks were contributing, making plays, great plays in this game to make us optimistic about the rest of this season as the rookies start to get more experience, but also years to come in the future. These guys are going to be stepping up. These are going to be the core of the franchise for years to come. So the future is bright for the Bengals. But let's go one game at a time, because that's the only thing we need to worry about right now. The Bengals are 7-6. They're still in this thing, and they won on Joe Burrow's birthday. Even though Joe Burrow was hurt, he was on the sidelines, giving them that Joe Burrow magic. If you're brand new to this podcast, go back and check out episode 0, where I explain who I am, what this show is all about. But basically, I'm a lifelong Bengals fan, played football all the way up through college, and I want to share some of my experiences and perspective about the game of football and this Bengals team with you, the listener, for free, without any ads or anything like that. I'm a total outsider. I'm not selling you anything. Not affiliated with the Bengals franchise at all. This podcast is just meant to inform, entertain, and enhance your Bengals fan experience this season. And what a crazy season it has been. In our last episode, the preview for this Week 14 matchup, we talked about how both these teams look pretty even on paper. It should be a pretty close game. I was expecting a close matchup, and in a way, I was almost disappointed by how poorly the Colts played in this game. They were actually fortunate to score 14 points. If they didn't have kind of a lucky turnover that turned into a defensive touchdown, the Colts would have barely even scored 10 points in this game. So the Bengals really blew the Colts' doors off. It was pretty much an embarrassment for the Colts. Bengals dominated in every facet of this game. But from a high-level summary view of this game, the thing that stood out was the Bengals offense continues to adapt to Jake Browning's particular skill set. And it looks more like a conventional, traditional offense that every other team in the NFL is running these days, meaning there's more balance. It's not 4 to 5 wide, spread it out every play, have the quarterback out of shotgun and just pass 40 and 50 plays every game. It's much more even in terms of running and passing. They're putting Jake Browning under center, doing play action, having him fake handoff and roll out on bootlegs to the left and the right. And it's just a much more creative, balanced offense that was confusing why they weren't doing something like this when Joe Burrow was healthy for the previous 2/3 of the season. Like, what took so long? Why did it take until Week 14? I know, why am I complaining now? But it's just like, why did it take them so long to figure this out? Or what was the holdup? What was the blocking point? Because it looks so different. It's like night and day between having Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. And Jonah Williams, I think he's played with Jake Browning as all the way back to high school, so he knows Jake Browning. But Jonah was saying maybe the team was playing a little bit looser with Jake Browning at quarterback. I don't want to hear any, Joe Burrow slander. So let's not say that they're playing better without Joe Burrow. You definitely don't want to say that, Jonah Williams. That's how you find yourself not on the Bengals anymore. So you better remember who your starting quarterback is, Jonah Williams. I'm just letting you know right now it's going to be Joe Burrow. So don't be talking mess. But anyway, Jake Browning has been playing pretty good, I guess. But mostly it was the fact that he was throwing to talented receivers. Namely, Chase Brown, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Tanner Hudson. All those guys are stepping up and making huge plays for Jake Browning. And let's not forget the offensive line. That's really where it all starts, was the Bengals' offensive and defensive line were just whooping the Colts' ass, pretty much. They were just beating their ass every play of this game. I thought the Colts had a decent offensive line, but the Bengals' defense was just stonewalling them, especially B.J. Hill and DJ Reader were not letting the Colts get any rushing yards. But of course, I've got to talk about Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson, first play of the game, gets a sack. And it didn't stop there because Trey Hendrickson ended the game pretty much with a sack. He had 2 sacks in this game, 2 quarterback hits. Trey Hendrickson has 13.5 sacks in the season. He's obviously going to go to the Pro Bowl. Another amazing season for Trey Hendrickson. But just the Bengals defensive line dominating this game. Bengals defensive backs, secondary. Cheeto was locking receivers down. They couldn't get anything on Cheeto. He's looking a lot better than he had at the beginning of the season. And overall, as a team, the Bengals didn't make killer mistakes. The Colts made several critical mistakes, penalties, turnovers that killed the Colts' chances of winning this game. The Bengals, on the other hand, limited the penalties, limited the mistakes, really played a clean, smart game. That's what we've been seeing for most of the games for the Bengals. I think they're one of the least penalized teams in the NFL. They play a smart brand of football, but especially in this game, they really showed that they were the much superior team to Indianapolis. Really, there was a couple moments, there was a little nervousness you had as a Bengals fan in this game. And that was where there was one moment where Colts had the pick 6. Obviously, that's not a good play to have a turnover, pick 6. So Colts got a turnover and defensive touchdown. That wasn't good. Then there was a moment in this game where it looked like Jake Browning was injured because he came over to the sidelines kind of grabbing his hand, and then he took a knee on the field. The trainers ran out to him, and they were looking at his hand, and we've already been through this once before as Bengals fans. We're all holding our breath because we saw this with Joe Burrow, the starting quarterback. He hurt his wrist. He's out for the season. We're looking at Jake Browning. He's holding his hand. We're like, oh no, what's wrong with his hand? Is another ligament torn? Is it another tendon? What's going on? My first reaction, seeing it, the way that the trainer was flexing his thumb, I was thinking it must be cramps in his thumb, because if it was like dislocated or broken or ligaments or something like that, you wouldn't be like pulling on it and tugging it and manipulating your hand like that. You would want to like stabilize it. But Jake Browning had cramps in his hand in a previous game, that it was towards the end of the game, and he was kind of flexing his hand, working his hand out. And they had asked him after the game, did you have some kind of injury? He's like, oh, no, I just kind of cramped up a little bit in my hands. So we had seen this before, and it was interesting. He had to run into the locker room to get an IV bag put in to rehydrate. And it was like a cold day out, and he was saying, oh, I guess because it's cold, I didn't drink enough water. Who knows? Jake Browning has said he's going to maybe have to get an IV at every halftime going forward so he doesn't cramp up. It's kind of ridiculous for a quarterback to have his hand cramp up, because he didn't even throw that many passes. It's not like he was, airing it out every play. Very bizarre and strange to see that from a starting quarterback in the NFL having hand cramps. We'll have to watch that going forward, because you don't want him to have like hand cramps at the worst possible time in a key moment in the game. But we did see A.J. McCarron get into the game for a brief period of time. We thought we saw him throw a touchdown pass, which would have been unbelievable. But we don't want to see A.J. McCarron, as much as fun as it would be. Let's keep Jake Browning uncramped and in the game as much as possible. But as long as Jake Browning doesn't get cramps, he should be able to stay in the game, because he barely got touched in this game. He didn't get sacked at all. He only got knocked down a couple times, but the offensive line did a tremendous job in pass blocking. Now, the Bengals have used more 2 tight end sets, so Drew Sample and Mitch Wilcox have been coming in and helping the offensive line protect on pass plays. No Travion Williams on the field for the most part, which is good. We don't need Travion out there. Keep Drew Sample out there. He's a much better blocker, and he's not any worse than Travion at catching passes out of the backfield, so might as well put the better blocker in there. And we saw Chase Brown so much better than Travion, so I don't want to see anyone. Sorry, Travion, but you're going to have to sit on the bench from now on. We're going to see Chase Brown running the ball, catching the ball in combination with Joe Mixon. That was the thing. They had that 1-2 punch, thunder and lightning, whatever you want to call it. 2 running backs. Amazing. That's the thing that was missing this entire season, was that other running back. We had so much Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon is great in some capacity, but you can't have like 100% Joe Mixon all the time. So finally we have somebody else in Chase Brown to come in, get some catches, get some runs, get a little explosiveness, some speed. Actually, Chase Brown had a top speed of 22.05 miles an hour in this game, which was the second fastest ball carrier in the NFL this season. Chase Brown, second fastest guy in the NFL all season behind DK Metcalf. So faster than Tyreek Hill, faster than Jalen Waddle and all those Dolphins players. Chase Brown up there. And for the Bengals defense, they shut down the Colts offense in so many ways. Starting with the run. Colts could not get anything going in the running game. Bengals defense limited them to 46 yards rushing. Zach Moss only managed 28 yards on 13 carries, 2.2 yards per carry. The Colts couldn't get too much going in the passing game either. They had a few decent completions. Michael Pittman Jr. had 95 yards on 8 receptions, long of 31. But overall, the Bengals didn't give up any deep passes, and Gardner Minshew was under attack from the Bengals defensive line. He didn't have time to sit back there and pick apart the Bengals defensive secondary. Bengals defensive line was getting good pressure up front. And I don't know if the Colts offensive line just, wasn't as good as some of the other offensive lines that the Bengals have faced recently, but they were really dominating up front. It was something we haven't seen out of the Bengals too much this season, is the Bengals defensive line shutting anybody down. But this was a dominating performance by them. To give you some idea of the way that this game kind of went, the Colts' offensive drives ended this way. The Colts got the ball first, and they went 3 and out, punt. They had a punt, missed field goal, scored a touchdown. Then they had a pick 6, which wasn't really a drive. So they had a touchdown, then they went to halftime. Then after halftime, Colts had another punt, interception, turnover on 4th down, and end of the game. So the Colts offense only scored on one of their possessions. They had 1 touchdown on offense all day. The rest of it was punts, interceptions, turnover on 4th down. Colts could not get anything going on offense. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Bengals were very efficient and looked excellent moving the ball up and down the field on the Colts offense all day. They started off with a 3 and out punt on their first drive, but then after that, they had a touchdown, interception, which ended in a pick 6, so that wasn't great. But then punt, went into halftime. After halftime, Bengals had touchdown, punt, field goal, punt, field goal. Much more successful for the Bengals offense. They had 6 scoring drives as opposed to the Colts' 1 scoring drive. So clear domination by the Bengals in this game. I would say the only thing that was missing, if you want to be really nitpicky about this game for a Bengals fan, was not enough Jamar Chase. He only had 4 targets. He had 3 catches on 4 targets for 29 yards. And that's not really the kind of production that Jamar Chase expects from himself. But, they won the game 34-14. So you can't complain and say, oh, why didn't Jamar Chase get the ball more? The ball can only go to so many players in the game. They only threw the ball 25 times in the game, so he can't get all the passes. But still, 4 targets for Jamar Chase, that's never really enough. You need to get him the ball. Obviously, the Colts had a game plan. Don't let Jamar Chase beat us. They were double covering him almost every play, so it's hard to force the ball into him. But still, we need to get Jamar Chase more involved, if at all possible, because he needs to get those records. He needs to get paid. That being said, he does have 89 catches right now, which is his most catches he's had in a season. So not doing too shabby at all. But Ja'Marr Chase has his eyes set on 117 catches, he said. He's at 87 right now. He wants to get 117. He's got 30 catches in 4 games. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's going to be a tough road to hoe for Ja'Marr Chase if he wants to get to 117 catches. As I mentioned, the other thing to get excited about in this game was how many draft picks, most recent draft picks, played. Every single draft pick played in this game. If you go through the list, I'll name them all off, but we can think about how many players contributed. Myles Murphy, defensive end, first-round pick. He came in when Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard needed a break. He was getting meaningful snaps. He got a few tackles in there. Second-round pick, DJ Turner, starting cornerback opposite of Chidobe Awuzie. I don't even know if they threw at DJ Turner all day. I barely heard his name being called. That means he was locking down whoever he was guarding. They weren't even trying to test him on defense. Jordan Battle was the starter on defense as a safety. He's the third-round pick. He's playing much better than Nick Scott. Nick Scott has basically been eliminated. He's barely playing at all this game. Charlie Jones was in there returning punts. He got a few snaps on offense, didn't get any targets. Chase Brown, obviously, making huge plays in this game, breaking off touchdowns, running the ball well. Andre Josivas, even though he got a penalty in this game, that's okay. He's still in there. Brad Robbins, the punter, and even DJ Ivey, the 7th-round pick cornerback, he had a nice pass breakup on Alex Pierce on the left sideline. And on the punt, DJ Ivey made a nice play pushing one of the blockers into the return man on the fair catch that caused the Colts return guy to not catch the punt, muff the punt. DJ Ivey recovered the fumble. So not only did DJ Ivey cause the fumble, but he also recovered the play. So great play by the rookie DJ Ivey. Hopefully he gets more playing time because I think he's a player. I don't want to speculate on anybody's job security, but I feel like DJ Ivey, I don't know if he's a nickel cornerback, but there's got to be some way to get him on the field because he's a good football player. One of the other things we talked about that helped the Bengals offense was getting T. Higgins back, not just from a receiving standpoint as far as how big and physical he is, but defenses have to respect him and play even more evenly. Even though they did double cover Ja'Marr Chase, that opened up some more opportunities for other players, including T. Higgins. T had a bad drop in this game, and he had a offensive pass interference where he pushed off in the end zone on what should have been a touchdown. But T. Higgins, he's just got to work on not being so obvious with the offensive pass interference. This isn't the first time T. Higgins has been called with pushing off on these deep passes. It's kind of like in basketball where you're going up for a rebound. T. Higgins would have been called for over the back penalties. I don't know if he got those a lot in basketball, but he's constantly like pushing off on guys. He's got to learn to be a little bit more subtle as far as using maybe his elbows or his forearms instead of totally extending his arms out like he's bench pressing the guy and totally locking out his elbows where it's obvious pass interference. He's got to, maybe like give him just a little shove down by the hip or give him a little chicken wing in the back or something. But yeah, overall solid game by T. Higgins. He had a couple of long catches that helped the Bengals get into scoring position. Overall, we want to see more consistency out of T. Higgins just in terms of assignments, catching the ball, doing all the things you need to do if he's supposed to be this number one receiver. Everybody always talks about T. Higgins as. I would say Ja'Marr Chase is clearly the number one receiver because he knows what to do on plays. And T. Higgins, a lot of times it seems like he's lost on his assignments or not making the right reads, but whatever. But T. Higgins is obviously like a freak athlete. You can't replace that. So I hope the Bengals keep him around. But I wouldn't really prioritize T. Higgins. If they could trade him away for draft picks, that might not be so bad. But on a positive note, Tanner Hudson scored his first touchdown in the NFL. Congratulations, Tanner Hudson. It's been a long time coming. He's been making plays out there, great catches, racking up the yards. Hadn't gotten in the end zone yet, so good to see him get in. We also saw, as we mentioned, Chase Brown scored his first touchdown in the NFL. And it was an amazing touchdown. As we said, he got over 22 miles an hour, showed the speed, showed the burst, and he showed great body control to slow down at the very end when there was a defender coming to make the tackle at the 5-yard line. Chase Brown slowed up just enough to make the defender run right by him. He kind of did the Top Gun, hit the air brakes, slow down real quick, let him fly right by. That's what Chase Brown did. He had the afterburners on, then he hit the brakes, let him fly right by, went in the end zone. Beautiful play by Chase Brown. Speaking of beautiful plays, there was another play late in this game where Trey Hendrickson was coming off the left edge, as he typically does, getting pressure on Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew tried to step up and throw, but he threw it into the helmet of one of his offensive linemen. The ball popped up in the air, and then out of nowhere, like a cat, B.J. Hill jumped, pounced on the ball, and intercepted it, scooped it up right before it hit the ground. Amazing interception. B.J. Hill's first regular season interception. He had one against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs that everybody remembers when they went to the Super Bowl. But B.J. Hill's first regular season interception was a big one against the Colts. Great play by him. And this was such a weird game because at halftime, the score was tied. So if you only checked in on this game at halftime, it would have seemed like it was a very close, very exciting, entertaining game. But quite the contrary. The Bengals dominated and had control of the game pretty much from start to finish. It was only for that brief minute of the game that the Colts were even in it. So it was really strange how the game progressed. The Bengals jumped out to an early 14-0 lead. Then the Colts finally got on the board with a touchdown because the field goal kicker for the Colts, that was the thing, the Colts, just such a bad day for the Colts all the way around. Not only, so at first play of the game, Trey Hendrickson comes in, sacks Gardner Minshew, pretty much kills the Colts' first drive of the game. Then they come in, the second drive, they punt it, not much on their second drive. Third drive for the Colts, they got 10 plays, 56 yards, then they missed the field goal. Looked like they had a good drive going, and then Matt Gay from 38 yards, the announcer said that Matt Gay had made something like 61 kicks in a row inside of 40 yards, and obviously he missed the kick off the upright. It was a little bit windy, but the ball really hooked on the Colts kicker, Matt Gay. I didn't think it was that windy, but it looked like a crosswind somewhat. It really hooked off the upright, so just nothing was going right for the Colts. Bengals were scoring pretty much at will. Then all of a sudden, Colts had a 17-play drive, 79 yards to score a touchdown. They get a touchdown, and then they miss the extra point. The kicker misses the extra point, so the kicker for the Colts is just killing them. But right after that, it was 14-6. Bengals run 2 plays, and they throw a pick 6 to Tanner Hudson. It was, I don't know if you would call it a bad pass or a miscommunication, somewhere in between, basically where Tanner Hudson, Jake Browning saw him, and he didn't throw the ball onto Tanner Hudson's body. Basically, it was outside of him, it was behind him. Tanner Hudson stuck one hand out, kind of tipped the pass right into the arms of the Colts defender. They ran it back for a pick 6. The Colts ended up converting the 2-point conversion to make it 14-14 right before halftime. So the Bengals had done so much good all the way up until halftime. Then all of a sudden they threw it all the way 14-14. But luckily, Colts were completely inept, couldn't manage any points after halftime. Bengals proceeded to score 4 more times, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, just dominated the rest of the game. So it was never really close except for that brief moment at halftime, just to keep it a little bit entertaining. But for the most part, the Bengals had control from start to finish. Now, this is a big win for the franchise, for the team, but it's another short week because they play 6 days from now on Saturday against the Vikings. They played Monday, then they played Sunday, now Saturday. So it's another 6-day week. So it's a quick turnaround for this Bengals team, but I think they can do it. Especially because the Vikings did not look good at all. They almost got to the end of regulation against the Raiders without any points. Luckily, somebody scored a field goal in that game. Vikings won 3-0. Congratulations. But the Vikings are coming in to play the Bengals next week. Bengals are favored in that game. I guess not surprisingly. They started off 4.5-point favorites against the Vikings. We'll have plenty of time to get to the Vikings, but looking pretty good for the Bengals from here on out. If you want to go back and relive some of the memories and some of the highs and lows of the most recent game, go check out the most recent From the Jungle episode of the Bengals on YouTube. They did a breakdown and recap of the Steelers game, which was completely horrible, and then the Jaguars game, which was totally awesome. So a lot more time of the episode was obviously devoted to that Jaguars game, but it was the Jake Browning game. They were showing so many incredible highlights from that game. So if you want to go back and relive a magical moment in Bengals franchise history, go check out that From the Jungle episode. At the end of it, especially. Not so much the Steelers game, but more the Jaguars part. That was pretty good. And it's crazy. We thought the season was over, but nay, the season is not over. And around the league, we see all kinds of teams having similar issues that the Bengals are having, specifically like Justin Herbert, the quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers. He has a fractured right index finger. He's obviously right-handed. That's his throwing hand. So he is going to be out for I can't imagine you can't throw with a fractured index finger. So he is going to be out for, who knows, probably the rest of the season. The Chargers season is probably over. Come on, you can't be, they don't have Jake Browning on their team. So the Chargers are done. They're out of the picture. The Jets, they're probably out of the picture, but Zach Wilson came back in. He got the win over the Texans. C.J. Stroud, it looks like I got a concussion against the Jets in that game. So Houston, they may have to turn to their backup if C.J. Stroud isn't able to play next week. We'll see. So the Texans are one of those teams that are 7-6 in competition with the Bengals, along with the Colts, the Broncos, the Bengals, the Steelers. So many teams are at the 7-6 mark right now. It's going to be a fight to the finish. One team that's not 7-6, they're 8-5. The Kansas City Chiefs. You may have watched their game. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. I'm not a big Chiefs fan. Especially, I don't know what it is about Patrick Mahomes. He really gets under my skin lately because he's always flopping and begging for calls and complaining. And it's not good enough that he's just like not a good player. He has to like constantly get these fake roughing the passer penalties and flop going out of bounds. And the referees give him all these penalties and whatever. So in this game, there was this controversial play everybody's talking about where the Chiefs threw a pass to Travis Kelce up the middle of the field, and then it was hard to say whether it was designed or not, but Kelce had the wherewithal to throw the ball, because you can throw it backwards. As long as if you catch it down the field, you can lateral the ball, like in rugby or whatever, like in other types of plays like that. You can throw the ball backwards. So he threw the ball to another Chiefs player who ran it in for a touchdown, took the lead. Chiefs thought they had, taken the lead in the game and possibly won the game. But the referees called a penalty on the play. They said one of the wide receivers on the opposite side of the field lined up offside or lined up over the ball. So you can't line up past the line of scrimmage, or that's a penalty, whether you're on offense or defense or whoever it is. And then Patrick Mahomes is like losing his mind, complaining at the referees, plays like way after the play is even over, saying, I can't believe you would call that. How dare you call offensive offsides? I've been in the league for 7 years. Nobody's ever called that. Well, maybe you never had a wide receiver who's stupid enough to line up offsides and get the penalty. Don't blame it on the referee when we have cameras that show he's lined up offsides. Patrick Mahomes needs to stop crying like a little baby and complaining just because one thing doesn't go his way. Oh, boo-hoo, we lost the game because why don't you blame it on your wide receiver who doesn't know how to line up instead of screaming, yelling, and making a fool out of yourself, looking like an idiot, having your teammates hold you back because you're going to go, what are you going to go, fight the referee on the sideline because he did his job and called a player offsides who was offsides? So Patrick Mahomes really can go shove it up his ass. I really don't care for Patrick Mahomes at all at this point. I hope Jake Browning meets him in the playoffs and just destroys Patrick Mahomes. Nobody cares about you and Taylor Swift. That's what it is. Like, oh, how dare you call this flag on us? We're the Chiefs. We have Taylor Swift in the box. Don't you know who we are? Like, forget you, Patrick Mahomes. I hope you guys get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. This isn't the Chiefs podcast. We don't care about the Chiefs. Forget the Chiefs. This is a Bengals podcast. And the Bengals are on the way up. Bengals are meeting the Minnesota Vikings, who are not that good. So we don't want to assume anything, But if the Bengals can keep playing the way that they're playing, whatever secret sauce the Bengals coaching staff has been using lately, keep it going. Like, I don't know why they didn't coach this well. Like, they're obviously coaching way better. I don't know what it is, but they're calling plays much better. The scheme is better. Everything is just clicking on such a higher level than it was earlier in the season. I don't know what took so long. Why did they make us stress out so much this whole season? What were they holding back for? I don't know. But I'm glad that they finally found it, and this season can be good, because it could be way worse as a fan. You could be a Carolina Panthers fan right now. They are like suicidal at this point. They don't know what to do with themselves. Bryce Young looks like one of the worst number 1 overall picks of all time. They're 1-12. He's not getting any better. They fired their head coach. They don't have a first-round pick. Nothing is going good for the Carolina Panthers. So thank God we're not in that situation. We actually have a winning record. We're going into Week 15 with a winning record without Joe Burrow. Can you imagine that? Unbelievable. So I think that's about all I got for this episode. It was truly an amazing game. I wish there was more Bengals games like that, because there'd be more Bengals fans. That was the thing that's irritating, was I couldn't watch this game on my local CBS channel because I had to, they had the Browns game on. The Browns game was like nationwide. It's because it was Jags versus the Browns. Like, maybe that's a bigger matchup. They thought it was going to be better teams. So they had this Colts Bengals on this tiny, tiny pocket, like the state of Indiana and southern Ohio and northern Kentucky was like the only part of the country that got to see this. If you live in the United States, if you live outside the United States, of course, you've got NFL.com. You can watch it on the streaming, or you can do like the pirate streams or whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But it's just so annoying that the NFL has this monopoly and I can't just watch the games when I want to watch them. Like, I would pay money if they could just let me watch all the Bengals games live on the internet, but they won't even give me that. It's so stupid. I hate the NFL and their monopoly. One day, when Congress gets their act together, I'm an old man shouting at a cloud right now, I will be able to pay money and just watch the Bengals games a la carte on the internet. It's so stupid that I have to go through this roundabout rigmarole just to watch the Bengals. Anyway, that's what it's like being a Bengals fan and not living in Cincinnati. You have to deal with alternative ways of watching the Bengals. You can't go to the game. You can't watch it on TV. You got to find some way to watch the Bengals somehow. You got to make it happen. Come back in the next episode. I think I'm going to do the next episode is just going to be a preview, because the Bengals play on Saturday. Quick turnaround. I'm not going to do anything in the middle unless some kind of crazy news breaks in the middle of the week. Then we'll come back with an emergency podcast. But I'll come back sometime middle of the week, do a little preview for this Minnesota Vikings upcoming game. It's going to be a good matchup. It's going to be a triple header on NFL Network for Saturday. Interesting. Finally getting those Saturday games. I want to see more Saturday games earlier. Like, why didn't they have Saturday games this week? There's no college football on. Let's get some NFL in there. I mean, what's up? But come back and join me on the next episode. And let me know if you have any comments. If you have any comments, I will read them on the next episode. So leave me a comment in this episode, or hit me up on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, at Bengal Bites, and I'll read your comment on the next episode. Let me know, what do you think about this team? Where do you think they're going to go? How far could they go? Are they going to make it to the playoffs? And if so, how far? I'd be interested to know what you Bengals fans are thinking out there right now. So enjoy this Victory Monday. Bengals got another win, so we can start off this week on the right foot. It feels so much better to start the week with a Bengals victory. You can go to work with a little extra spring in your step, or wherever you're going. It just feels so much better when the Bengals win. Everything's, all the clouds disappear and the birds are singing, and everything just feels so great when you get that win. So until next episode, I'll leave you with a Who Day, and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.